You're going to hit record now. Got it. Great. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about, as I was saying, today we're going to be reviewing use of Panopoly, applying style plugins. I know there were questions about using menus and making them appear, so I thought I would start with that. And then we'll go through applying various style plugins and how that works. And then we'll be reviewing all of the views that exist in the system and just kind of walking through them, make sure you understand what's what, and we can dig into them a little bit more as we need to. So that's the plan for today.
Sounds good.
Okay, so to get started, I'm going to create some content on my site, and maybe I'll just make this a little bigger. Oh, that's a little too big. Can everyone still see my full screen? I think you should see a little arrow over here on the right. Okay, great. Way to go. Go to meeting. Okay, so I'm going to add some content, and what I'm going to show you is how you add something to the primary navigation so that it appears up in the header.
Well, before we go on, Robin, I've been meaning to ask this for the longest time. So the installs you give us, we get a blank home page, and it says add content.
Right.
How do you add or manage content on the home page?
So when you see this, when you log in, it means you don't have any content, as it says. And the way you do this is you set up any type of node, and then we can identify it as the home page under configuration. So we can do that while we're here. So let's say we decide general page will be our home page, and we'll call it home page, and I don't know, we'll give it a path slug of home, and this is our home page. Not worry about the rest of these things. So I'm going to show you two things at once. Here's adding something to the menu. So you probably already know how to do this, right? You check the box, and then you say, yes, home page is a great title for my menu link, and I'm going to put it in the main menu. What you may not have realized is if you don't publish this node, it will not appear in the menu. So it's very important that you come over here and set this to published. And say ready, home page is ready. If you'd like to leave a message, click save. And then we have our home page, which isn't much, but it's there. And we can see the home page is showing up in the primary navigation. There's an outstanding QA ticket to fix the background color for this. It should be a white background color that's appearing here. So hopefully we can pull that into the next sprint and get it fixed up. And then let's take a look at making this particular page the front page for this site. So I click on configuration, I click site information, and then I go to this front page section. Does everyone see that? And see default front page. And I change the path from node to home, the path I gave it, and click save.
Oh, I see that's also where you can set 403 and 404 errors. Excellent.
Yeah. So you can create special nodes that say something nice instead of the default 403 and 404 errors. It's usually very good to set up some general pages for the 403 and 404s because you can it'll just provide a little more structure than what Drupal provides by default. Okay, so we have that, and now we'll click on Home. And we now see our home page whenever we click Home. So, and you can see up here the URL is still just the domain name, but we give it a slug anyway, just so we can identify it with a URL path. And so that's great. And then we say, I don't want to use this style plugin for, I was about to click there, but that's not how we want to do it. So that that's one way we can add items to the menu. You can also do it through the administration screen. So if I click on Structure, Menus, Edit menu, right? So our main menu, this powers the primary navigation, what you see in the header, as well as secondary nav that shows up in the sidebar. So it's all one menu structure, and then we configure Drupal to show us various levels. And so I already have some menu items in here for some nodes that I created earlier today. And so I'm going to just re-enable them, but just so you can see what that user interface is like, you can click Add Link here and type in whatever text you'd like to see displayed. So you might have like an About, and then you need to know the path. So if I know that I have an About page that has a URL path of About, then I can enter that here. I actually don't know if I have an About page, so I'm not going to, I'm not going to do anything with that right now. But then you just click Save to do that.
So real quick,
yeah.
I have a question about that path.
Yeah. How do you find it?
Well, partly how to find it, but also at the very end of the help text there, it says use enter front to link to the front page. If you change what the front page is, does that still work? Yes.
So you would want to use that, preferably over the actual static path. So instead of, let's say we wanted About to go to the home page, or we're going to add a home link to the URL, I could put in the path that I created for my node, but I can also put in front, and then front will always go to that other configuration item we just set, and say, hey, what's the home page? I'm going to go to that page.
Okay, excellent.
So, it's good to type front. So we can do that.
Okay.
So we have a couple in there now, but well, let's leave that one, and we'll disable this one. I'm going to bring my other menu items back, enable them so we can see them all. What's important to know here is these are all nodes, whether it's a news node or a general page, you name it. As long as they're published, then they will appear in the menu. So I happen to know all three of these are published, so I'm going to bring them back up. And then let's go back to the home page so we can see our updated menu. So now we see home and news and students. If you notice, there was a page called child page, which does not appear here. We don't have the drop-downs turned on out of the box, but it is available. Okay, so let's say we want to switch the style plugin for this primary navigation. We have to go to the template for it's kind of like the framework of the whole site, right? So there are lots of ways we can change panels configuration. We can do things like customize this page, but what we really want to do right now is set this the style plugin for every page on the site. So in order to do that, you need to be an administrator, and then we're going to go over to let's see, structure. I'm just catching up in my notes. And then we'll go to kind of scroll down here and click on panels. So this panel administrative page gives you an access and an overview of all of the panels configuration on the site. So we have a list of fieldable panel panes, but what we're really interested in right now are the managed pages, and default site template is the template that manages the header and the footer for the site.
And this area is part of Panopoly. It's not from another module, or it's not core.
This is so what we're working with right now. When we look at the site template in particular, is something that comes from Panels Everywhere. So that's another module that we're using, and what it lets us do is let panels configuration manage what displays in the header and the footer instead of core. So this
Okay,
basically
so
moves.
this is the panels.
Right, exactly. So it's just another panels functionality, and it basically moves us away from using the block system that Drupal that Drupal provides out of the box. We're providing the same functionality with panels because it allows a lot of flexibility um, and control over who can access it. So once we're here, for those of you who haven't looked at Page Manager before, right? So Page Manager is part of the system that allows us to do these panels configurations. So there's a variety of things that come with one template, and this template has one variant called site-wide default. So this means we've named it that way to specify that this will apply to every page on the site. And what we need to do right now is click on Content so that we can make some changes about style plugins. So the Content tab reveals an abstracted view of our configuration. So we're not actually seeing the name of the site here, but we're seeing the structure that it displays here, right? And level 1 menu block is our primary navigation. I wish I could give you better titles for that, but that is something that we don't have easy control over. So level 1 menu
quick,
block.
Robin?
Yep.
Yeah, real quick, can we just go over terminology real quick? Because I've been calling like the subheader and the hero image region, the site name regions, I've been calling those regions.
They are regions, yes.
And then, the little content chunks inside of their panels. But I was noticing in some of the other screens that this whole thing is called a panel.
That's
like when
right.
I went into Panopoly. Yeah, so I don't know really what to call the little chunks of content then.
The little chunks of content are called panes. And they are equivalent to the block, in the block system, right? So we're kind of creating a chunk of content, and in panels behind the scenes, and when I'm teaching people how to use panels, I refer to them as panes. It's especially helpful when yeah, so pane, P-A-N-E, for one pane.
Excellent. Thank you.
And it's helpful for people to learn, especially like site administrators should learn that terminology. It's helpful to know if you're trying to figure out, why isn't this thing displaying, and I thought I configured A, B, and C. If they know that something's called a region and this is called a pane, it can be a lot more useful for OIT to help them figure out what are we looking at, what do we need to work on, instead of they just if they're a little vague about it or use the word block, that would be tougher.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood the terminology. So thank you.
Great. And there may be other panels terms that we want to go over as well, but let me show the style plugin change, and then we'll talk about terminology maybe just a little more. So when I find the pane I want to change, when I want to affect how it looks with a style plugin, then I click on this widget over here. So when you look at my documentation, when I write up, here's how you make changes, I'll say, find the level 1 menu block and click the widget on the right. So I'm referring to this little gear over here on the right. And we can see there's actually a style already applied. It shows us that in the context menu. Is everyone seeing that? Primary navigation option 2? Is that there? Yeah. And if we want to change it, we click change underneath it. And this pulls up a familiar user interface because we've seen this through the in-place editor as well. But now we're applying it for the whole site. So instead of primary navigation option 2, we're going to use primary navigation option 1. Let's go ahead and click next. And this asterisk denotes that a change has been made, but it is not saved. I believe, no, there are no other identifiers that you have changes on the page. So that's a little subtle, but you'll want to track it. And preferably anytime you make a change when you click one of these widgets here on the right, you go ahead and save right away so that you don't forget to save things and click away. So I'm going to click Update and Save. I almost never click just Update or Preview. It's always just get it in there, get it saved, and then I'll go check my changes. So let's leave this here, and I'll go over to this guy and click on Home. And so the goal here when I make a change, so here we can see there's the new style is applied. So all of my links are still there, everything's working just fine, but now we have a new, it's rendered differently this time. And the goal here is that when a person is first setting up their site, they would make this change up front and then not worry about it anymore. So there are probably a series of steps that a new site owner, with their new Drupal site will want to do before they even start adding content, whether they're migrating it in or otherwise. So this might be one of those things where they're making sure that, one, they know what the home page is, getting that configured, two, choosing the style of plugins that they'd like to see for things like navigation. Okay. So back here in the world of panels, Patrick, do you want me to go over some of these other tabs that are in here, like selection rules and context, or should we tackle that at some other time?
I think the context. Well, we can tackle those some other time. They're a little more specific. The context one is the one I think that's particularly foreign to me. I think the other one's kind of I've figured out for the most part, but the context one is a little more cryptic to me.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry. What was that?
I just said that one might be good to go over.
Okay. So let's see. There may not be much context in here right now. So whenever we're working with panels, there's a concept of context. And what context is the ability to bring in other information on the site into the current page I'm displaying. And every time we create a template with panels, we can have, it will come with some built-in context. And so the context basically means that this information is available for me when I'm configuring the template. So I might do things like, in this case, because I have access to an internal URL, maybe I would want to know that URL because I'm going to set a visibility rule on a pane. So there basically gives us access to more data in the system. And also it kind of orients the system to what it's looking at. So here we're looking at something that applies to all pages. It might be interesting to go over to, say, the node template. So this template is used for all nodes. Just take a quick look at it. Oh, we're using Panelizer for that. That's right. So let's go over there. So we'll click on content types. And again, Panelizer is an extension of panels, allows us to do some interesting extension of panels per node. That's really the difference between panels as a system on its own and Panelizer. Panelizer lets us apply unique configuration to every single node. But we're allowed to set defaults, which we love to do. I don't know if I want calendar. That'll be fine. So we click on Panelizer. Full page override would be when I'm viewing the full node itself. And let's see what context comes with that. So right now, the only context we have is what's available with my node. But this is useful stuff. So for instance, I might do something like I want to show various panes based on who the author is, or something like that. So I can get the author information from the context. So again, it's kind of making variables available to me when I'm over in the Content tab, where you can do a variety of configuration options. So we can always come back to that.
Okay,
maybe,
it makes sense. I get it.
Okay, it's a good starting point. Go ahead.
Yeah, one quick question I have, since we're in the area of Panelizer for individual content types. You have when you make a new content type or you're editing a content type, you have the option of saying I want to use Panelizer, and then like you can say I want a full page override, default, teaser. There's like there's like several options in there. What's a good practice that you recommend for, if someone's making a standard content type that's just going to be, just a helpful way of organizing their pages and helping with the navigation. What are things? Which ones of those would they turn on? Would they turn on the full page override, the teaser?
Yep.
Are those two the primary ones, or?
Yeah, we make all three available, and the use of featured is we kind of leave it there as something that people might use on a home page, but we don't know exactly how they would use it. Right. So let's just talk about these view modes. So full page override and teaser allow us to say what fields display when I look at the full page versus the teaser. So the teaser might just have the title and so on. And as far as like what do I want in every full page override, I almost always want this level 2 menu block. That's our secondary navigation. So I want to make sure that that exists. You want to bring in this node, whatever the content type is, right? So that when I pull in this node, that means it's kind of like just bring in all of the fields from the calendar and show them on the page. Versus you could also set each field individually, which we might see if we looked at, say, the general page. But for the calendar, it's really has just the one, has one big field for holding the, well, one tiny field that holds the address. Yep.
Yeah, mainly doing a full page override, a teaser, and the featured.
And featured if you want, yeah. So I think for most people, they'll use full page override for when you're viewing each node, and teaser when you want to create a view to list a whole bunch of nodes. When I, for instance, for staff and faculty, we set up specific fields to display in the teaser mode, so it's not trying to show the whole bio in a full list of faculty, right? So it's that sort of thing.
And the default view, or the default display, like when is that used?
It's not in this case. So
in this case. Yeah.
If
we were to add it.
If you were to add it, then you would not want to use full page override. So full page override is overriding what we see in managed display, which I'm just going to click. So it overrides.
But in Panelizer, yeah, Panelizer itself has an option to check default and then to say, like if you go
yes.
to the edit tab right now and you look at the Panelizer, yeah.
Yeah, let me click there.
Edit tab, yeah, and then somewhere in here you can select how you're using Panelizer. Yeah, right there. So yeah, right there. Yeah, the full page override. The next one down is default. When does that get used?
We're not using it, and I believe it's a best practice to not use default. I think there's a little bit of an issue between core and panels with that.
Okay.
So the recommendation that we know from the community is using full page override is the way to go.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay. So back to our menu work. The other thing I wanted to show is how child pages work. And I already have one in place, so let me just go over to the structure and menus, just so we can see behind the scenes. When I'm an administrator, I always have a chance to see everything that's in my main menu. And so I have this child page, which is there. And the reason I wanted to show you this is to show how it will appear in the left sidebar. So right now I have this set up to use one of the style plugins. Probably, either of them is fine. And what's interesting to note is that one of the things I found when I was preparing for this setup is that the way the secondary nav looks out of the box right now is that it is not styled. So I have a QA ticket in the must-haves right now to say that we should provide one of the style plugins we created as the default. And let me show you how you set that up. So earlier when we talked about updating the style plugin for this primary navigation, that's in the header, that goes in the site template, which is like the wrapper around all things. This secondary nav is actually applied per content type. So in order to make a change to this style plugin, again, in general, I want to avoid customizing this page when I want to change something as structural as navigation. I want to go to the content type in this case. So I would go to structure. We were just there, but I'm going to go back. I think that was, let me just confirm, I was on a news page, right? Yes. Okay. So this is my news item. It says news. And I'm going to go to the news content type and set it up to use the correct style plugin. So I click on content types in structure. I find news in my list, and I go over here and click edit, which will allow me to access the Panelizer tab. So I'm actually not going to edit this page, but go over to Panelizer. And then let's go to full page override. And we'll click on content. So I think what's interesting to note here is there's a little bit of a user interface change. Remember on the site template, these settings, context, and layout, they were vertical tabs over here on the left. This is the way that Panels works right now. So when it comes to Panelizer, what were vertical tabs now come over here as little subtasks under the Panelizer tab. So once I'm here, all right, I'm looking at my abstracted chunks of content. I've got my menu block here. This is a news node, so we do certain interesting things for news. We make sure the image displays and it's at the top. And what happens next is we'll see a publication date, then the full body of that news node, and then the rest of these are the same as usual. So, but I'm not going to worry about that. I just want to update my style plugin for my menu. So I'm going to click on the widget again, just like last time. There's no style applied. And I'm going to choose option 1. And again, when I'm setting up this style plugin for this one content type, I need to repeat it for all content types. So it takes a little more work, and hopefully you're going to do it once at the beginning and not again.
Did you want primary navigation 1 or secondary navigation 1?
Did I just wildly click primary? Thanks, John. Well, let's try that again.
I'm just paying attention.
Secondary navigation, thank you. Appreciate that. Might have some interesting results with applying the primary. And just so you know, we looked at trying to reduce the plugins you would have available based on what you were trying to attach the plugin to, but that isn't all that feasible right now. So you get all of the style plugins in one list, and need to be thoughtful with your choices. So I selected that style plugin. I click Save. I'm going to go back over. Well, we can go back to the home page. And then we click on News. and this strict warning came up, but hasn't been an issue for us other than displaying. I'm not sure if I have a ticket for this one, Tom. So we should probably create a ticket for that.
Okay, I'll make a note.
And then, so then what we see is what was a simple bullet with the word child page is now following the other style that we saw with the gray background and the text. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, I'll take that as a yes.
So I seem to remember that there was an option for a title up here on the. I realize you can't see where my mouse is pointing on top as part of the secondary navigation. Was that? I don't know if that's something that they would use, but would that be? Is that where you would set that as well, or?
You could set a title. I have to be honest to say that we assumed no one would set a title for that.
Okay.
So I would wonder if that would need any styling work. I can try it right now if you're interested.
I thought I saw that on some of the stuff that I take that back on Christina's stuff. It was just the quick links where it said quick links. I think everything else did not have a title.
Okay.
Yeah, I take it. Don't worry about it.
Okay. The one other thing I would like to show you, and I think hopefully, do I still have that up? No. We'll go back to our panelizer settings. So the other thing that you can do when you're making changes with panels is also disable pane. So I just want to show that to you as well in case someone doesn't want secondary navigation or they don't want to they might have like a promotional pane that shows up for a little while and then they don't want to show it again until next fall, let's say. So they can keep track of it and keep that pane in existence, but disable it so it doesn't display anymore. So the way we do that, let's say we have something we want on the general page. Click Panelizer. I'm going to go to my full page override. Then content. That's why I shouldn't have clicked away. It takes a couple of clicks to get back here. And so, if they need to disable anything, they just click Disable Pane. It will say Status Hidden very clearly when you look at the configuration. So in this case, I'm going to turn this back on. But that's something they can do, and this can be really useful for things that happen annually or quarterly, or they just need to show it for a short time period, but they don't want to lose the content itself. So they might create just like a basic text pane, and they're putting some notice in there, and then say, you know what, I don't need to show this until the end of the semester, end of next semester. So that can be useful for folks.
Excellent.
Okay.
Could you, quick Robin, go through the window that pops up when you want to add a pane to a region? Just like what the different categories
Sure.
mean and what they'll cover?
So if we want to add content, this is the one you're talking about, right? Okay. So these tabs up top are coming from core, essentially, or contrib modules. So they're available out of the box. We didn't do anything special to make those appear. Actually, that's true for all of these things. But it knows how to go through the systems. So even if, let's say you have a contrib module that creates blocks for you and you want to place them as a pane, you can do that. I click blocks. I have blocks that these level 1, level 2 menu blocks, those come from menu block module. Workbench information comes from Workbench, and so on and so forth. On the web comes from on the web. So that's good to know. If you're a more experienced developer or site builder, you can still get things done, no matter where your module is coming from or what it builds.
So Robin, when Beth did the demo a couple of weeks ago, and she was showing Superfish, so she turned on the Superfish module, but she also turned on the Blocks module. I'm wondering what the blocks module did. I mean, because it seemed. Do you already have it on? Is that what we're looking at, or is it something different?
No, so the block system would be over. I wonder if we even have. We probably don't even have it enabled. It technically would list over here in structure. The reason she turned it on is it's a temporary enabling of that system, because the only way we can configure Superfish blocks is by editing them through the block system. So that is one of the pitfalls of keeping the block system turned off. But in general, we want it disabled, not because it causes issues, but it can cause confusion for administrators. They're going to start trying to apply blocks when they should be using panels.
So if somebody wants to use Superfish, they turn on Superfish, they turn on blocks.
They do a little configuration.
They do their configuration, then they turn blocks off again?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's been documented. So we've been keeping any kind of confusing thing like that. That's a one-time setup. We document in our separate training document, so I can give that to you later. We've just been trying to capture little things like that, little things that I think, oh, I'm not sure if anyone would know to do this, So let's just write this down so they know, so they don't get confused or try turning on a whole bunch of things that they really didn't need to turn on, So that's definitely documented.
Real quick, the blocks module is turned on in the sandbox. I don't know if that was part there to begin with.
That was me this morning. I turned on. I turned on Superfish, and I didn't know that I was supposed to turn it off afterwards.
So it's not the end of the world if it stays enabled. It's not causing any issues. We really just did it to help administrators have fewer things to worry about, since not all folks may use Superfish.
Okay.
Yeah, no, definitely. If it's like out of the 80%, I think it's better to have it turned off than have it turned on. So.
Okay.
But I think most people would want the Superfish, don't you, Patrick? I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I could see people one of the like the two main things I could see people wanting to do is I want to do a hero image and I want drop-down navigation. Like those are like two big things I could see people wanting to customize things right away to get those going. So I hear what you're saying.
And I think one of the things that will be important as part of training or introducing people to the site is to make sure they see how Superfish works for tablets and mobile devices, and just make sure they understand. It's not just people with desktops that are looking at their sites, and do they want to? It's not to say it all works, right? That's why we set it up, but you can start to have different ideas about, okay, what do I really need in my primary navigation? Do they need access to every single link in a drop-down? So yeah, anyone who's been using their phone to browse through websites, they're usually looking for a reduced number of links. Versus showing them everything. Okay, so enough about panels. Let's take a look at views. I think we're staying on schedule here, so that's good. So I've clicked on. I was already in structure. Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead there. So I clicked on menu, structure, and then views was one of the items there. And so these are views that are available by default after installation. Typically, the tag helps us identify a module that is in charge of creating this view. In the case of these first three, which I'll say admin, we have like a views admin module in place, and it allows people to do things like it basically makes the content, the admin content screens, a lot more useful. So just so you have an idea of this first one, or the second one, administration nodes goes to, and it links to admin content. So that looks like, that's this guy. So if you've ever used Core out of the box without this module, you wouldn't have all these options for being able to search. So you can search by title and author, and some certain things are available here, or a vocabulary that wouldn't be there by default with Core. Okay, so let's go back to views. So that helps us identify, where did this come from? So when I see UMN, I can say, oh, this faculty view is something that was created specifically for UMN. Great. And it has a simple description, a list of faculty members. And that would be the case throughout. So when I come down here to news, I can see UMN is here again, so I know that's something that was created for news. And is also just a listing of news items, essentially. So you'll see that unlike the admin views, that the UMN views don't have URL paths. They're meant to be implemented as panes so that you would drop them into a landing page. So you would create a landing page node for news, and then you would say from that screen we were looking at, pull in the view pane. Let's see if I have that up. Did I drop that one out? I might have. We'll do it this way quickly. So let's say I wanted to put in a view of news items in my main content. I come over here to view panes. And then I can see the faculty list is here, recent news is here, staff, there's a staff list, there's an archive. We provide a news archive in case you want like an archive page, landing page. So that's how views and panels are working together. And you can do the same. If you come up with a fantastic view of general page nodes that everyone wants to see, you make it a view pane so that it can show up here in this list. So let me show you how that looks. We'll work with faculty for a second. So when I add a pane, when I add a display in views, so these are called display types. Content pane is one of them. So when I need to make a new display, I make it a content pane so I can easily drop it in. You could use block, but okay. You don't want to. You definitely want to use content pane.
Okay, because block won't display in the list of panes, whereas this would display in that list of panes?
That's true. The blocks, the main reason you don't want to use blocks is that you don't get the context connection that you will with content panes. So remember we were talking about panels has context. This is one of the ways you use context. So you might do something like let's see, what's a typical use case? We might use a taxonomy, for example, and say this news node has a term, new students. And we can then use that through a content pane to say, show me all related news items that also use the term new students. So using a content pane makes that connection really simple. You basically set it up here in views, and then it's available to you for you to use. So that's why we use content panes. Technically speaking, you could make a block display and you'll get to it from the blocks tab, right? So it would be there, but you won't get that fantastic connection of context that we love to use in Drupal.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
So there are other types of display modes here, but in general, everyone's going to want to use content pane. That'll be the typical setup. All right, let's go back to the list. So again, you can look through the full list of views here. Some of the views that are coming from Fieltable Panel Panes and the Panopoly distribution have the word default in here. That's the one thing I've noticed about them. So it would be great if they said what module they came from, but they say default. So, we can see we have one node queue view in here, and we use this so that this is another type of view pane you could drop in, and it would allow you to say, I have a news landing page, and I'm only going to feature certain news items on this page. So the node queue lets us say, add, news A, B, and C, and only those would be displayed when you use this node queue view. staff, again, very similar to faculty. It's what we would use when we want to have a full list of staff on a landing page. So you create your landing page, pull in the content pane, go from there. As long as you have staff nodes and they're published, they'll display in that list. So some of the rest of these views that are enabled are about Workbench. And this UMN media browser is the view we use when you're adding an image to a page. Kind of pops up a little dialog box. We use a view there. So and what it does is it allows us to filter by taxonomy term. So if I upload images and I give them appropriate terms like you know, press release, or however I want to, you know, students at work, any terms you want to use, then when you open up that media browser, you could type in that term or pull from a list and say, show me only those images that have this term, to allow you to reuse a little more easily. So, and again, once a site is up and running, any of these views could be modified however you see fit. So if you think, like, I need to change the media browser to do one more thing, you know, I want to filter by date or something along those lines, you could go in there, add that filter, assuming you know how to use views, right? You can go in there and make those changes. So I think one of the things that kind of relates back to something that John and I talk about every now and then about what happens when a site is installed and what kinds of updates they get. So these views that have the UMN tag, like news, those views would not get updated again, right? Once a site is created, and if it gets modified by anyone on that site, we want to leave it to them to manage their own changes and not overwrite them. So that's the difference between, say, having the Superfish module available for all sites versus making an alteration to the news view. Like that wouldn't apply to any existing sites. Does that make sense, John?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good. All right. So we have 9 minutes. I could show setting up like a faculty landing page, or I want to see if there are other types of questions that maybe aren't relating to panels or views. All right, I'll do it. Okay, so we'll leave these views here. And let's go over here. So again, if you were just coming in here, I've clicked on menu and content, right? So that's where I'm at. And I'm clicking add content, and I'm going to make a faculty landing page. So from my list of content types, I'll select landing page. And I'm going to call it faculty view. Faculty landing page will just be boring. I was going to try and be cool, but it's not happening. All right. And again, path slug, which is something we've talked about in the past, and we've made an attempt to improve the help text there. But really, this is what we would see after the after the domain name. So the domain name is, well, this is my sandbox domain name. So let's say it's grad.umn.edu. The slug shows in after the slash, right? So it's all of that. And typically this should just be, one word and nothing too exciting. So for a faculty landing page, I would probably call it faculty. And I'm not going to worry about...
Can I ask a dumb question, which I know is kind of dumb? Yeah. But the slug, if it's a child element, so let's say it's under faculty, would adding the slug there make it faculty domain/faculty/, or do all of these slugs come straight from the main domain name?
They come straight from the main domain name. You could perhaps make that change in the path auto settings. So should I veer away to show you that is the question.
No.
But just so
You
you
can
know,
still
under configuration, you can set up what patterns are used for the URL paths for all types of content. And right now, what we have that setting is say, hey, go find the slug that someone entered, so they have full control over the situation.
Okay. And it'll throw an error if the slug's already used, correct?
Yes. When you go to save, it'll say, oh, you can't do that. All right, so we'll put this in the menu, and we're just going to call it faculty, and we'll make it a primary item. And I'm going to publish it. I'm skipping the log message this time. Don't tell anyone. Okay. So now, because this is a landing page, and this is what we would typically expect you to do for a landing page, we will customize it. So we're finally getting to click Customize this page. And just know the alternative to that is using the Panelizer tab. And so let's use the Panelizer tab, because again, I kind of want to reiterate being able to look at the abstract, because ultimately this is the way you want to control your layout changes. If you want to control when they're published, you have to do it through the Panelizer tab. So I want to show you that up front, because the in-place editor is always there. So let's look at the content for a full page override. And so this is what's new. We now have the ability to say, is the changes that I make to the layout of this page, should I publish them, or should they be a draft and a new revision? So this is pretty cool stuff, because it wouldn't otherwise your layout changes would always be published. So it's good to have this. It's a little bit cumbersome because it shows up under the save button, but sadly we don't have a lot of control over the order of things here. So we did our best. So we're going to add in, what do we just create? We have that faculty list, right? So we're going to click Add Content, go to our View pane. I'm not sure I have any faculty, so I'm going to add this, but we may need to go back and add some faculty. So what's interesting to note is I can give this, a title like, all faculty. And you could even have it be a link to some other thing if you wanted to, but typically you won't need to do that. I'll just display it there. You can control what fields are displayed, so we give you access to all of the faculty fields. So let's say we just want, we're not going to show address, but maybe we want, portrait probably, and and the title will be the person's name. So behind the scenes, a person will enter their name in two separate fields, first name, last name, and then we automatically pull those together to make it the title of the node, and that would be displayed here. So let's do that.
So Robin, real quick, this is in addition to or supersedes some of these display settings that happen when you actually make the view, or when you make the teaser.
That's right.
The teaser panelizer content type, or
it would override those, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, like I don't know that we have short description in the teaser view, but that's okay. We'll just put this in there so we have it. I've got 3 minutes. So here's my new pane. It always shows up at the bottom. It has the little asterisk to let me know that it's new. I'm going to go ahead and drag it to the top of my other panes. So that displays first. Now it gives me 2 asterisks. Not only have I created it, but now I've made a layout change by moving it. So it's just letting me know. I'm going to go ahead and publish this. And while that's publishing, we're going to go over here and and quickly create at least one faculty member. Yeah, I didn't have any other faculty notes in existence. So we'll just say John Doe.
Robin, really
John.
quick, while you're entering this, you said a moment when you hit save there, you said while that's publishing. Is there a few second delay before that would be visible on the site to end users?
Uh, it could be the case that the varnish cache. No, I think that gets updated. No, I don't think so. So unless the delay will be if you set some caching settings to delay it, which is useful. So you can set up the page cache, and typically, like, it might be 5 minutes, so that anonymous users wouldn't see the change until for another 5 minutes. But you
Okay.
can always clear that cache manually if you need to. But so out of the box, you don't want any caching, right? Because you're going to be making changes left and right, adding new pages, checking things out. No need to cache. And then once you're in production, then you're going to try and cache as much as you possibly can. So
Okay, I was asking mainly that would have been related to one of John's QA tickets that we have in, so I was curious.
okay, pizza. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that. All right, so there's one thing we need kind of John Doe at umn.edu. I know that probably doesn't follow your standard. And I think he has an 800 number. Also not typical, I'm sure. So there's John. I didn't put in an image for him, but that's only because we're short on time. So if I go back to my faculty landing page and click View, I'm going to see John is listed. So, and each time I add in another faculty member, they'll list here. It's probably alphabetical by last name, first name. So, so that's how you would start a landing page. And then, when it's a landing page, you might put in an image over here in the sidebar, or, you might have like a broader image going across, or you put in the hero image, things like that.
I may be daydreaming, but I assume there's a way to format that so that like the name stands out more than it doesn't just kind of blend in with the other text there.
You could probably apply some markup to it in the view. If you think there's something that's not styling the way you would expect it to, that's a change we could make so it's there by default.
I was just looking at this and I was thinking that if you had 4 or 5, the name and the email addresses would all kind of start to blend.
Yeah, and I think what you need to remember is I didn't put in an image. So typically what you would see is the image and then the text to the right. So I just ran a little short on time here. So
okay.
I could do that if you want, although I'm not sure if I have any good portrait pictures.
No, that's okay.
But I can do that for next time if you guys want to do
it.
So yeah, typically you'll have a nice image there on the left. Their information shows up on the right with links to go to their full page.
Okay.
So did that help? And do we want to try and set up a follow-up Train the Trainer session sometime in February?
Yeah, that helped me a lot. I really appreciate it. And I would love to have another Train the Trainer.
I agree. I'm not sure what the content should be at this point, but I think it's good to get it on the schedule.
Yeah, so maybe for mid-month, and if John and Patrick and Ryan DeBaker, you too. So if you're coming up with questions, you're like, boy, I wish we could go over A, B, and C. Like even if we want to go over like migration, maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
not ready for that yet, but
I'm thinking of stuff for Acquia as well. Like I know. I could see like when we want to go production, I know in the cloud there are options like set for production mode and managing the cache and all of that. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. I don't know if that's you or Acquia that we should be asking for that, but
well, we can start with me if you want, and then follow up with Acquia. It might be good to connect with them first too, and just say, do you have a usual like checklist that you give to your customers for preparing for production? Because my guess is they have that.
Yep. And anyway, we'll come up with a list, and so we'll let Tom schedule it and come up with a list of things to cover.
And I am, especially as I've been working on the grad migration and kind of just checking out things that need to happen when you set up a site, I'm starting to document that in the, when you're getting ready to launch, you need to do A, B, and C. So I am starting to track that too in our installation notes. So anytime I see something that I realize, oh, the site administrator has to configure this before they go live, I am tracking that as well.
Okay.